Hi there, my name's Pania, and today I'm going to be discussing the findings of a clinical trial, the effects of a low FODMAP diet with and without gluten on irritable bowel syndrome, a double-blind placebo-controlled randomised trial by Masani et al. Published in 2021. So this was a clinical trial that investigated the impacts of implementing a low FODMAP diet both with and without gluten on the clinical symptoms experienced by individuals with irritable bowel syndrome. Just to provide some background, irritable bowel syndrome is a prevalent gastrointestinal condition that significantly affects the quality of life of those impacted, with symptoms including abdominal pain, bloating, distension, which all can cause significant amounts of discomfort and distress. It is also estimated that IBS prevalence is around 3.5% in Australia and 4.1% globally. The study was a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomised clinical trial with individuals who were recently diagnosed with IBS symptoms. All group members were assigned as a control group or an intervention group, with the control group receiving a low FODMAP diet with 5 grams per day of rice flour, or the intervention group was receiving a low FODMAP diet as well with 5 grams per day of gluten powder. The study was over 6 weeks with a 6-week dietary intervention, with the primary outcome measure being irritable bowel syndrome. The primary outcome measure was the Irritable Bowel Syndrome Symptom Severity Scale, which is a questionnaire, and that was applied to both groups at the start of the study and after the study. There were also other questionnaires and measures that were abdominal pain, bowel habits, consistency, frequency, as well as quality of life. However, the primary outcome measure was the Irritable Bowel Syndrome Symptom Severity Scale. The clinical trial consisted of 49 patients that were in the study. Overall, 3 people discontinued the treatment with no further reasoning, and 2 people were lost to follow-up in the intervention group. And in the control group, 1 person discontinued treatment with no further reasoning. So results-wise, it was a significant improvement was observed in the total score of the Irritable Bowel Syndrome Symptom Severity Score Scale in both low FODMAP diet groups with and without gluten, and that was a p-value of less than 0.05. However, the gluten group experienced 17% less improvement in total irritable bowel syndrome symptom severity scale compared to the placebo group, which was not statistically significant, and there was no 95% confidence intervals reported either. So now, as well, with that in mind, let's taking a look closer into the potential bias of the study. So firstly, regarding selection bias, the baseline measures, including that IBS symptom severity score scale, and other measures were statistically significantly different between the groups, which indicates some selection bias. However, the risk was minimised by adjusting the baseline scores when reporting the outcomes and including baseline measures in the final. So that one is selection bias. Allocation bias refers to the randomisation of the participants in the study as well as the assessors, and this cannot be determined because this information wasn't provided in the study, so leaving the risk uncertain. Next, attrition bias. This was observed as some of the participants discontinued the treatment or were lost to the follow-up in the groups. So the intervention group had more dropouts, potentially increasing the risk of attrition bias. However, intention to treat analysis and imputation of missing outcome data was used to mitigate this bias, maintaining a study's statistical power. However, this was observed in the study due to those dropouts. Regarding the performance bias and detection bias, it's unknown because the study didn't provide information regarding the blinding process of the participants or the assessors. So it's uncertain whether, and we can't say whether performance bias and detection bias was possible. However, considering it was a double-blind randomised clinical trial, it's assumed that both participants and investigators were blinded. However, we don't know. So the lacking of blinding information increases the risk of potential performance and detection bias within this study. And regarding reporting bias, the study did not report any 95% confidence intervals, indicating reduced precision of results and thus indicating reporting bias. However, statistical significance was provided, and the statistical significant difference in the primary outcomes of IBS SSS at baseline suggests some selection bias. Finally, there was no considerations of confounding variables in the study, limiting our ability to evaluate the confounding bias.